The water in Cavel Pit had been wrong for 3 days before Mira went in to find out why. She noticed it on the walk down from the relay station. A faint luminescence beneath the surface at the deep end, pale blue-green, steady rather than pulsing, which ruled out the bioluminescent algae blooms that sometimes drifted in from the bay. Cavel Pit was a flooded quarry on the eastern shelf of Cape Mordhen, cut from the basalt 2 centuries ago and abandoned when the seam ran out. Mira had dived it every summer since she was 11, first with her uncle's team, then alone with a rebreather and a line reel, cataloging the strange formations in the lower chamber that the official surveys had only partially mapped. She was 15 now, and knew the pit the way she knew the rooms of her own house. The glow was not from the lower chamber. It was coming from somewhere below it, from a level that, according to every survey ever filed, did not exist. She went in at dawn on the 4th day. The upper water was cold and clear, morning light filtering through in long columns that turned the flooded rock face pale gold before fading. At 30 meters the light from above died, and she switched on her headlamp. At 60 meters, she reached the ledge where the lower chamber opened to the right, the mapped space with its curtains of mineral deposit, and the collapsed wall on the south side that the surveys always noted as the dig's eastern boundary. She had been through that wall twice before and found nothing but packed sediment and the broken ends of old drill shafts. The glow was not coming from the wall, it was coming from beneath the floor. She hovered over the quarry floor at 70 meters and swept her light across it. The basalt was undisturbed, the same flat, featureless bed she had photographed dozens of times. But from a seam running east-west across the full width of the chamber, barely a centimeter wide, the pale blue-green light was leaking upward through the stone. Mira photographed it. She ran her fingers along the seam. The rock was vibrating, not perceptibly to the eye but unmistakably to the touch, a frequency so low it was more felt in the chest than the fingertips. She checked her rebreather gauge, 39 minutes remaining. She photographed the seam's full length, marked its endpoints on her dive computer, and ascended. She filed a report with the Cape Mordhen Geological Survey office by noon. By the following morning, the office had forwarded it to the Regional Science Authority, who flagged it to Earth's Deep Archive Monitoring Network, which cross-referenced it in 47 seconds against a catalog entry last updated 7,000 years ago, and escalated it to Earth Defense within the hour. Mira did not know that last part yet. She was back at the pit when the first liaison team arrived, already suiting up for a second dive. The woman from the liaison vehicle was young, not much older than 25, Mira guessed, with the kind of careful stillness that felt practiced rather than natural. She set her equipment case on the quarry rim, looked at the water for a long moment, then looked at Mira. "You found the resonance seam," she said, not a question. "I found a light," Mira said, "and a vibration." "That's what it is." The woman sat down on the quarry edge. "My name is Advocate Saren, Earth Defense, Remnant Site Division." She paused. "Have you heard of the Thalori?" Mira had heard of the Thalori the way she had heard of the Viharath, the Davari, the Vorath, through school and defense history panels and the memorial corridors in Mordhen City. The Thalori were different from the others. They had not come to take. They had not come to fight. 7,000 years ago, a refugee fleet had stopped at Earth for 47 days, not long enough to leave lasting infrastructure, long enough to leave something else. The deep archives called it gift leaving, though scholars were careful to note that was their interpretive framework, not a documented Thalori intention. What the Thalori had left was found in 16 sites across Earth, always at depth, inside glaciers, beneath riverbeds, inside drowned valleys. The sites were cataloged, monitored, and sealed. None had ever activated. "Until now," Mira said. Saren looked at her without surprise. "Until now." The resonance seam opened on the 6th day. Not violently, not with noise. The basalt floor of cave pit simply receded, both halves sliding apart along the seam with a precision that no geological process could account for, and from the space below, the pale blue-green light rose in full, steady and deep and clear, illuminating the water column all the way to the surface. Mira, watching from the rim, saw the pit change color from above. It was like watching a lamp turn on inside a lantern. She went in 30 minutes later, with Saren and 2 researchers behind her, all on comms. The chamber below the pit floor was large. Sonar put it at 45 meters wide and 20 meters tall, with a vaulted ceiling of worked stone, nothing like the quarry's rough-cut basalt. The walls were lined with smooth ovoid structures, each roughly the size of a person, embedded in the stone like seed pods. Each glowed with the same rhythmic blue-green light. Mira counted 22 visible from the entrance. More receded into the interior, beyond her light. "What are they?" she asked on the comm. Saren's voice was controlled. "The archive calls them renewal chambers. The scholarly term is Thalori vitae vessels." A pause. "We've never seen an active one before." Mira swam to the nearest vessel. Through its translucent surface, she could see a slow circulation of fluid, and something at the core that pulsed with each cycle of light. She put her gloved hand flat against it. It was warm, even through her wetsuit and glove, distinctly warm. "There's something alive in there," she said. "Yes," Saren was beside her now. "According to the archive notes, the Thalori left the vitae vessels seeded. The renewal process was supposed to trigger on a specific environmental condition. The archive doesn't say which one. Apparently we've met it." "What grows in them?" A long pause. Then Saren said, "Biological repair compounds. Complex proteins, cellular regeneration factors, things our medical research has spent 3 centuries trying to synthesize artificially. The Thalori were a healing civilization. Not warriors, not builders, healers. When they fled their war and stopped here, they left what they had." Mira thought about that, the slow warm pulse against her palm. Something growing in the dark for 7,000 years, patient as stone, waiting for the condition that would let it finish. "And the Thalori," she asked, "do they know?" Saren was quiet a moment. "They might," she said, "very soon." The fleet appeared at the outer edge of Earth's detection sphere on the 9th day after the pit opened. 17 vessels, moving slowly, slowly enough that the orbital grid logged them as non-aggressive before they crossed the solar boundary. The drive signatures matched the archive's reconstruction. The vessels were the same design as 7,000 years ago, though worn in a way the archive's drawings had not anticipated. Hull plating scarred with old damage, drive signatures intermittent, the approach trajectory slightly erratic, as if at least one vessel was running on reduced power. This was not a fleet at strength. It was a fleet that had come a long way and was not fully intact on arrival. They did not broadcast a demand. They did not broadcast a warning. They broadcast, in the mathematical notation the archives identified as Thalori Standard, a single repeating signal that Earth's translation systems rendered in 3 days as, "We are returning. We asked to collect what we left. We did not think it would survive." Earth Defense issued the standard containment alert. The orbital grid went to passive targeting. The Mordhen Regional Command posted 3 atmospheric warships above Cape Mordhen, visible from the pit's rim, their hulls dark against the bright morning sky, kilometer-long and quiet. Not weapons raised, witnesses posted. Mira was in the water when the translation came through. Saren relayed it on the dive comm without commentary. Mira hovered in front of the 20th vitae vessel she had catalogued that day. Its core pulsed. The fluid had changed color over the past 48 hours, deepening from pale blue-green to a richer, warmer gold. The medical team from Mordhen City had been running external scans, and what they found was not simple. The compounds inside the active vessels were real and potent. They were already diffusing at trace concentrations through the stone and up the water column into the bay, and in the coastal clinic 12 kilometers north of Cape Mordhen, the doctors had reported an anomalous improvement in recovery rates among patients with chronic cellular damage. They had not connected it to the pit. Earth Defense had. They didn't think it would survive, Mira said. No, Saren said. But it did, and it's already working. Yes. Mira looked at the vessel, the warm glow, the turning fluid, the deep patience of something designed to wait for the right moment to do its one intended thing. She thought about the fleet outside Earth's solar boundary. 17 ships, worn and slow. A civilization that had fled a war 7,000 years ago and returned to collect the last thing they had left of themselves. They did not think it would survive. She ran her fingers across the vessel's surface one more time. Then she ascended. The response Earth sent took 11 days to compose. Mira was not part of the diplomatic process. She was 15 and her contribution had been the dive and the report. But Saren kept her informed. In the quiet evenings when the liaison team gathered at the quarry rim and watched the pit glow upward into the darkening sky. Earth's response said, "Your gift survived. It is doing what you intended. We will not keep it from you, but we ask that you consider what it is doing here before you collect it." The Thalori fleet stopped at Earth's inner system boundary for 9 days. Mira watched the warships overhead and thought about what 9 days felt like when you had traveled an unimaginable distance to collect the last thing you had. On the 10th day, the fleet sent its second transmission. The translation took 2 days. Earth Defense published it to all regional command networks and, by the next morning, to the public record, because what it said was not a military communication. It said, "We know what it is doing. We made it to do that. We did not know when we left that the world we left it on would still have people in it. We thought Earth would be empty. We thought we were leaving it for whoever came after. We did not know you were already here and would still be here." It said, "Keep it. It is the last complete set we have, keep it." It said, "Tell us your name for this place, so we can know where we left the last of ourselves that worked." Mira was at the quarry rim when Saren read her the third transmission. The pit below her was luminous in the late afternoon light, and in the bay beyond the cape she could see a small fishing boat crossing toward the headland, unhurried, the way things moved when the world was working as it should. She thought about the worn hulls above the atmosphere, the fleet that had come back to find something it did not expect intact, the vessels below her, still pulsing, still completing the process that someone had started 7,000 years ago and gone away before they could see it finish. The clinic 12 kilometers north with its anomalous recovery rates, which the doctors would be told about tomorrow. She told Saren, "Cape Mordhen, tell them it's called Cape Mordhen." Saren relayed it. The Thalori fleet remained at the inner system boundary for 3 more days, long enough, the archive team said later, for their vessels to complete a full sensor sweep of all 16 sites. What their scans told them about the other 15 chambers was not transmitted to Earth. What the fleet transmitted before departing was a short sequence the translation systems rendered in 6 hours as a single phrase with no direct human analog. A compound term the linguistic team eventually settled on translating as held in trust by those who stayed. The fleet turned and left. Earth's orbital grid tracked it to the outer boundary and past it, until the worn drive signatures faded below detection threshold and the ships were gone. The chamber in Caval Pit kept glowing. Mira went down the next morning alone at dawn. The vitae vessels pulsed in their slow rhythm, warm and sure, doing the work they had been designed to do across a span of time no one had expected them to survive. She hovered at the center of the chamber and turned slowly in the blue-green light, thinking about the phrase the translators had chosen, held in trust, and how it was not quite the same as left behind, not quite the same as given, and was perhaps the only phrase that fit what had actually happened. Something had needed to be kept safe. A people had not known who would find it. They had left it anyway, in the dark, in the stone, at the bottom of a quarry that wouldn't be cut for another 6,000 years. And it had been kept safe without anyone knowing they were keeping it. And the people it was made for had found it, and were already being healed by it 12 kilometers away, in a clinic where the doctors did not yet know the reason for the numbers changing. The youngest person in the chamber was 15. She stayed down until her rebreather gauge read 12 minutes, and then she ascended slowly through the long columns of blue-green light that reached all the way to the surface and the open sky above. The world had been holding something it didn't know it was holding. Now it knew.